Hi, my name's Matt Widgery from FramedPlanet.com. Today we're back with part 2 of the using TTL flash with the Fuji X system with London photographer John Christopher.
Hello.
John, welcome back. Thanks very much for coming back for the part 2.
Yeah, great, magic.
Now, we had an exciting time last time with trying to get various different systems to work together with the Fuji system. And I know this is something that a lot of us Fuji X photographers really kind of have to wrap our heads around, is trying to get different sorts of flash to work with our Fuji systems. I think the last show should have been titled just the caveat show because there were so many kind of loopholes and twists and yes but if but no but why but whens that it's, you know, so it's really good of you to come down and explain all that. We got pretty much most of it sorted. We looked at the Shani system, we looked at the Yongnuo system as well, and we also looked at the Nissin system, the i40, which actually will give you direct TTL through the top of the camera. If you haven't already seen that and are wondering what on earth we're talking about, I recommend going and looking at that now. That's that video there, so click on that and then come back and watch this afterwards. In the notes below, I'll also link a note to the other videos that I've already done on using flash with the Fuji system, because there's some other bits and bobs in there that you may find helpful as a background to this discussion as well. But without further ado, John is back, and we're going to be having a look this time at the 603 triggers. And we're also going to be having a look at some other caveats with the 622s. This is more Yongnuo in this particular case. Right. So, John, fire away.
Okay, right. Anyway, this is kind of... We're going to deal with a big mystery first. And a lot has changed since the last time I was here. The big one being that I had my camera...
Kick the table over.
Repaired and sorted, and it's now working and firing on all cylinders. Thank you, Fuji.
Well done, Fuji.
Right.
They did a good job with that. Did they
oh
back
yeah.
to you in time
Well, they repaired the lens mount, and they repaired, or should I say, ripped out the main board and exchanged it for new. So I reckon I've now owned the closest thing to an X Pro 2 that is, you know, actually all possible. So anyway, this is good stuff. Anyway, we had big issue regarding the Yongnuo RF603 transceivers. Now, Matt couldn't get his to work.
No, not at all.
Not at all. It was having intermittent problems.
On
X2-1, whatever, it just wouldn't work. When I came over, we had exactly the same issue. I mean, we got it to work for maybe 5 seconds, and then nothing.
It worked reliably until we switched it off and on again.
Again.
It was kind of like it was firing on every shot.
Yeah, there was something very wrong with it, and we couldn't figure out. We simply couldn't figure out what was going on. Given that. Anything that's the theory that if you've got a Canon shoe and you fit it onto a Fuji body, it should technically work.
Yeah. But
it wasn't happening. I'd forgotten at the time I didn't bring my... This one is the SN600C. So it's a nice manual bod, and it's ETL on if you fit it onto the camera, and we're getting absolutely no problems at all.
Firing every time.
I mean,
should be said just for the purposes of people that don't know about the 603 triggers. These are there we go. So it's firing with no problem at all. For those of you that aren't familiar with the 603 triggers, these are manual triggers. They're very simple. They're the most basic idea that you can have. All it's doing is sending one radio pulse out to the other one to say fire. So you're not getting TTL, you're not going to be able to control grids up and down.
Nothing like that. It's a plain dumb trigger.
But for that reason, it should be bulletproof.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing really that should go wrong with it, because it's a pulse that's going out and it's being read by the other one.
Now the big difference between Matt's 603s and my 603s is that mine is the Mark II version.
Yeah.
Now
the original ones.
Now he had the original ones. Still, there's very little difference, physical difference between the two transceivers, and that's what they are. They're transceivers.
Yeah.
So whether they've done something with their firmware or there's something else going on, I don't know.
There's two possibilities. There's one, they've changed something internally with the version 2, which makes it more compatible for whatever reason. Or the other possibility is that mine were simply fucked. Basically, it couldn't be working. One of those two things was happening, but certainly in the case of mine, and I tried the 603
because
and neither worked.
Now this is the weird thing. If you're shooting manual, whether you've got the N or the C, it's pretty well immaterial because it's dumb.
Yeah, it's just one pin.
It's one pin you fire and that's it. So I should be able to put on a dumb 603 onto either a Canon or a Fuji or anything, fire it, and that's it. Job done. It wasn't doing this, so this tells me that it could have been a manufacturing problem. The only problem is I can see you had how many? 4, 5?
Yeah, quite a
Right,
few.
he had quite a few. And every single one of them were displaying exactly the same fault. Very weird. But anyway, what we can tell you now, as it stands now, that these 603s Mark II work.
So the Mark II, we're happy works. The other thing is in the comments, there were some really good comments actually underneath the first video, which went up about a week ago as we record this. Some people commenting also on the 605, which is a slightly newer version of these. It looks kind of similar. It's the same form factor, but it's got a little LCD on the front of it, and you can control groups of flashes going on.
Yeah.
But what you can't do is change the power modes up and down like you can with the 622 or like I can with the TX.
With the TX.
But it's kind of like it's a halfway house. It's like it's sort of that, but you can control groups. That apparently we got one of the viewers was able to get that to work, which was good.
Good.
It's unconfirmed. There may be other caveats about that we don't know, but for the purposes of the like we've demonstrated this now, as you can see, working, and so I'm happy to say with some confidence that the version 2
Canon
works.
Should work.
Don't know about the Nikon because we haven't tried.
Yeah, we haven't tried it, but I mean,
should. But
in theory, with all things, if you're going to start mixing and matching, test. Yeah. Especially if you can test before you part with readies.
Yes. It's not always so easy with these because they're usually coming in from China, aren't they? They're coming in from eBay and Amazon
or whatever.
But they are cheap. I mean,
I mean that's the great thing about them.
Yeah.
As for the other one that can
605.
the 605 that can only do groups, but you can't.
Yeah.
I can't really see the point.
I
mean, if you got it, and if it works, anything floats your boat.
I guess if you've already got your group set up in sort of ratios that you're happy with, and you don't need to be changing
them all the
time,
time, great, magic. But the way I work anyway, things change, light changes. So I need to be able to remotely change groups, zooms, ratios from where I am.
And that's where these ones are going to come in.
This is where the venerable, lovely, great, legendary Yongnuo Y-622C comes in handy. Now, big warning. You can do manual with the 622N, but forget about doing ETTL. And using this system manually is brilliant. I have to tell you, it is truly brilliant. But if you want to have the full malarkey, you have to get the Canon one because there's no doubt about it. There is some linkage between the way Fuji have chosen to set up their flash and the way Canon has. They don't exactly speak. They speak the same language, just a different dialect. Is always
it's a really good way of putting it. One of them's got a very strong Geordie accent.
And blah blah blah. But they do speak. But there is, and since I had the return of my camera back, I've discovered a very, very important caveat.
Surely not a caveat with Fuji X.
Yeah.
I would never
It's an important one. Now, if you're like me and you operate dual systems, I currently operate Canon and Fuji, and my lighting crosses. So if I shoot manual, my lighting can go from Fuji to Canon, Canon to Fuji, no problem. But if I'm going to go ETTL and I'm going to be using this, we may have a problem. And the problem is that I think you're asking your Yongnuo to do too much, and sooner or sooner or later, it's going to give up the ghost. It's either not going to speak to one camera, the Canon, properly, or it's not going to speak to your Fuji properly.
So what's happening on these, when you're switching between the Fuji and the Canon cameras with that system, you always have to do like a factory reset on it to get it back to the Canon version. And doing that too many times.
Yeah, I can't really prove it. It's just an opinion through years of experience. But what I'm trying to say is that resetting this back to factory reset is pretty well easy. And just do a Google blah blah blah. You can do exactly the same thing with the 622 EX. But what I would warn against is doing the reset too often.
Right.
Because I think one of these days you're going to do a reset too often, it simply ain't going to reset. So I'm of the opinion that if you're going to employ the YN-622C as part of your workflow, have two separate systems. Have one for your Canon and have one for your Fuji, and let never the twain meet.
So what were the issues? Because you had, when we spoke after the last time we'd done the first video, you and I were speaking about this, and you were having describe the problems that you were having, because you were still switching out at that point.
Yes, I was switching out.
It's kind of like testing has come from.
Yeah, I went off to do a job with my Canons, and set up my lighting as usual and blah blah blah, and basically, I had no ETTL. The ETTL just wasn't working.
Just stopped working. And this was on the Fuji? On the Canon?
No, this was on a Canon.
On the Canon, right.
So this was on the Canon. So basically what I had to do, I panicked and blah, blah, blah.
Popular man.
Right. shot the entire thing in manual. Still saved me, so I got through the job, and then after the panic was open and got back home, did the factory reset, restored it as per Canon, plunked it in there, no problem, and it worked. So I'm very reluctant now to put, because this particular one is dedicated to my Canon ETTL, but I'm definitely going to get at least one of these and the TX version for so I can do my off-camera flash with my
pure Fuji.
And just keep it pure Fuji. Just put a mark on it, Fuji, blah blah blah, mark it up, and then you'll be okay. That's what I think.
This would be an interesting one to throw open to the viewers as well, because the brilliant thing about just the people that watch this is just how helpful they are to each other, and I've really appreciated the comments that have been coming through. And so anybody that's had a similar setup, I know there's a bunch of you out there like John who've been using the Canon Pro bodies and the Canon Pro flashes and have started to go mirrorless and picked up the Fujis. So there's a lot of people that will have this kind of gear. There'll be a million people that have got this. So anybody that's having, because it could be a couple of things. Again, like the problems I was having with the 603s, it could be that it's something to do with when it plugs onto the Fuji, it changes something. It could just be a wacky unit for whatever reason. So it'd be interesting to see if there's anybody out there that's come up with the same stuff. Because we're stronger together, we learn together.
Yes, most definitely.
And I know, John, you've been having a good conversation with Hans. Big shout out, Hans, if you're watching
Hans.
this. About, because the issues that you were having with your X-Pro 1 freezing, looks like he's experiencing something very, very similar at the moment.
Yes, I think I responded to your the post, and my guess, Hans, is that you've got exactly the same problem as me, or that I had, and that you should return your camera back to Fujifilm ASAP. I can tell you this, they did a truly bang up job on this, and
that seems, I don't know what they've put in there, but it does seem faster and more responsive. Don't know what they've done, but
it's I mean, the back booking focusing on this now is just to die for, literally. It's just, I mean, would fail me. They really do a good job.
And of course, it is unconfirmed that they put any sort of parts.
Well,
from the
God only
X-Pro 2
knows
in
what
there,
they've
who
done.
knows, but it seems
God only knows what they've
more
done.
responsive than mine.
Yeah.
More responsive than it was when it was
We
working
were
fine.
fine.
So whatever
It's
they've done,
speedy
you know.
fast. It's the low life. I mean, when this camera came out, the big issue was was focusing, and especially low light focusing. That issue is gone. Trust me when I tell you, it's gone, and it ain't coming back anytime soon. And if this is what they've done with my X Pro 1, God only knows what they're going to do with the X Pro 2.
So exciting.
That should be. I'm chills are going through my body just thinking about it. So
sell a kidney, do whatever you need to,
so
sell a child, whatever.
whatever. You know what I mean?
Get the
It's going to be
expensive
exciting times. There's some real exciting things. But to hands, get the camera sorted out. The other thing is that you were using a cheap Chinese.
He had a sync cable, but he didn't have the Canon one. He had like the
right.
Chinese one. So
I'd be very careful about putting cheap onto Premiere. It never works. If you've got a Rolls Royce, you don't put nasty cartwheels on your Rolls Royce. You just don't do that.
Yeah.
You don't do that.
That being said, I mean, I would be. We don't know, but my personal opinion is I'd be very surprised if the sync cable was the cause of this particular one. We don't know. It could
I
be,
think if you're hunting for trouble,
yeah.
I mean, you don't have to get the genuine Canon ones. They're third-party ones that is just as good as Canon, but you don't want to go too low. Far down the evolutionary trail, if you get my meaning. You don't want to go dirt cheap.
If the Canon one's £20 and you've got one for £2, including shipping from Shenzhen, it's probably
it's probably
not good
dodgy.
enough, yeah.
It's probably dodgy.
Yongnuo or something, it's 10 or
So
15,
I mean,
right,
Yongnuo do really great cables. Pixel do really good cables. What's the other ones that do really good cables? But Shiny does cables. There's have a look. You got my number, give us a call, blah blah blah, I'll talk you through it. Go for the main brand ones and you'll not go far wrong. The other thing is that I'm interested to know, because I haven't done a firmware upgrade since I got this from Fuji.
So this is still on 341.
This is still on 341, and quite frankly, it's going to stay on 341 because I'm a great advocate to what my mum used to say: if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And this is right now. This is working.
And for those of you that don't know, the only reason that we don't know. There's always little things that
add on it too.
But the main reasons for the 3.5 were to have compatibility with the new 35mm f2, the WR lens, and something else. So did they bring out another lens?
Whatever.
One other thing, but it was kind of like those two things. If you haven't got those two things.
I've got the kit 18 to 55. Why they call this a kit beggars belief, because it's
nice lens.
It's a cracking good lens, right? And I've done a firmware upgrade on the lens. I did a firmware upgrade. On the body, everything works fine. As long as it works fine, and and that's it. The only time I think you should do a firmware upgrade is if there's qualities within the firmware upgrade that you need.
Yeah,
I don't.
Like 3.41, for example, was compatible with Windows 10 or whatever. So if you've got that, you need it.
Or whatever. There is another thing though, which each firmware upgrade that you employ inside the Fuji might upset the TTL talk between your flash and the Yongnuo. Or whatever. So you've got to be very, very careful about that. You've got to be very, very careful about that.
And the other thing is, like, whenever you're upgrading anything, like, it doesn't matter if it's the firmware on your camera, it doesn't matter if it's a new update on Lightroom or a new version of OS X or whatever it is. if you've got a great big job that's just coming up like tomorrow, don't fucking do it. Wait until you've got a couple of spare days where you can actually chill it out. Because a lot of people went batshit when the Lightroom 6 came out and the import thing changed, because they came back from a wedding, they had 2,000 images and suddenly the import box had disappeared.
Good.
And okay, like, you know, that wasn't good of Adobe to have done that, but at the same time, can you really, like, you've been using 5.6 for the last, I don't know how long it was out for, don't upgrade it the day it comes out. There's no reason.
No reason.
So
it's literally, you know, after you've upgraded, you test everything.
Yeah.
And you test the entire workflow. So you test the body, the lens, the flash, anything that's in your workflow, you test it, and you test it to see if there's any compatible issues within the tool. Because if there is, and you're about to do a job, you know you got trouble. I'm of the opinion right now, I'm happy with what how I'm going to do it. The only thing,
working, so
literally,
no reason
so literally, I mean, for me, off-camera flash, I work better manually. I can control. I've never, even though, I mean, ETTL has come on leaps and bounds in last couple of years, but with shooting manual, it's certain. I know how the light's going to work, and I know that I can replicate that again and again and again, and you can't really say that about ETTL.
So basically, we've been talking a lot about the different TTL systems and manual systems that you can use with the Fuji systems. It's the same as using like the P mode on your camera though. Like if you're using TTL all the time, it can get thrown off by things just in the same way that using the automatic modes for your base exposure can be. So, a typical one is like you're shooting a wedding and like you shoot the groom and he's wearing a dark suit, and then you turn around and you shoot the bride and she's got a white dress on. The bride's face is going to be underexposed and the groom's face is going to be overexposed, because although like the scene like itself is like the same, like there's different values of that kind of brightness or luminosity within that scene. TTL is using the same meter. It's using the through the lens. That's what the TTL is. It's through the lens. So if you're shooting in fast-paced things that are changing around a lot, and I know, John, you're an event shooter where you don't know what's happening.
You don't know what's happening. You just got to you literally you're gunning and firing all in the same mode. Yeah. And like I say, as good as I think ETTL is, it's not perfect.
No,
and I would rather, and never
going
will
to be as good as the photographer that's controlling.
So I'm of the opinion I like shooting manually. And the great thing about, this system is that, like I said, I can change my settings, my ratios, my zoom, all remotely from where I am. I don't have to be going back and forth to the flash anymore, and it works. It works great. Yes, there's no doubt about it. If I'm really, really speedy fast and I'm pushed up against it, I can revert to ETTL. Yeah, and it's useful to have. It's useful to have, and it does what it and like I say, it works. Yeah. So I'm not going to say it doesn't work, but it should be relied on. It should be relied on
for most people.
So yes. So we've talked about kind of the whole deal with the Shani. I also think there are other flash guns out there that people should have a look at, and I'll tell you why. There's been as of January this year. Yongnuo started to put different firmware in their 622s and the 622C TXs, and then of June of this year, Shani responded by saying that they weren't going to guarantee compatibility between their flash gun and the Yongnuo 622.
Right, because we touched on this before, didn't we? But it's really interesting. This is because there was a time when, by accident or by design, they kind of worked with each other.
Yeah, there was definitely. I mean, there was a time, and it wasn't so long ago, when Shani actually promoted and marketed their flash guns because of the compatibility with the 622. Now that is not too.
They've had a
they've had a kind of divorce of the way. But when you think about it, both companies have said that they're still going to be fully compatible with, guess who? Canon. Well, if that's the case, surely there's going to be, some cross paths between.
I guess it's going to depend on to what level that goes, doesn't it? I mean, my feeling is that you probably will. You'll almost certainly still be able to get full manual. You may even be able to get TTL to some greater or less degree.
I think it's all about. I mean, I know that this is pre-January 2015, and it works, right? Both the and we're talking about the original 622Cs and 622C TXs. So they've got the original firmware, and I know that it works and blah blah blah, whatever. So if you are going to go out and spend money now on anything that is post January, this January.
Yeah, pre-January 2015.
Yeah, that is the big day. The big day. It may or may not work to varying degrees. And
it
to
might be because
batches.
you were talking about the fact that it was still working in terms of it was changing like the aperture settings and changing the power settings. It just wasn't showing up on the back of the screen.
So I mean,
it could be something as simple as that.
So I mean, you're going to have to, like I said, with all things, you're going to have to test, and it's not going to work. It's not going to work as a full ETTL, and you wouldn't expect that anyway, because even though they've got similar pins, they've not got exact pins, and even though they speak, a similar language, they do, but they speak a different dialect. So, do your test. If it works and it works for you, great. If it doesn't and you come up with a particular issue, do us a favour, come back to us, tell us about what's up, blah, blah, blah.
I think that pretty much covers the basic thing. And I think really the things to take away from this is that whatever system that you're using, test.
Oh, yes.
There are going to be caveats. Make sure that you get the things set up how they want. If you come across things that you think might be useful to the community that watch these shows, leave comments below, and if there's kind of a decent tranche of them come through, it might be worth making a future video just highlighting viewers things as well, so that we can all benefit from it. So listen, John, I really appreciate you coming down here again. It's been fascinating coming through all the different things, the way that you've methodically worked all through this stuff, and the fact that you are a Canon and a Fuji man, I think is particularly useful, because I know that's by far the biggest group of people that are transitioning over. As much as I love my Nikon brethren, we are smaller and fewer than there are with the Canon guys. So it's nice to hear from that perspective.
Yeah, and like I said, to all my Canon brethren out there, don't mix and match. Keep your kit separate.
Especially if you're using 62s.
Yeah, definitely. Try and keep your kit separate. Yeah. What goes for your Canon goes for your Canon. What goes for your Fuji keeps your Fuji, and don't mix and match. And that way, you are cutting down the possibilities of anything going wrong.
Brilliant stuff. Well, listen, John, thanks so much.
No problem.
Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you again soon.
Bye.
Cheers.